Olsen, and you'd think I never had that meeting with Vince. In my opinion, everything Vince and I discussed had been thrown out the window. I thought we had an understanding. Obviously, I was wrong. I had to think long and hard about what to do next. Do I just cave in, suck it up, and do what I have to do to make a living? Do I keep fighting this uphill battle where I have to pay 2 sets of lawyers against a company that is intentionally running up my legal tab as a defensive strategy? It took me a little while, but I finally made the decision to keep fighting. I could never look at myself in the mirror if I just tucked my tail between my legs and put up with the way WWE was trying to treat me. I had my lawyers finalize my deal with New Japan so I could have a few bucks to live on while I spent everything else on the lawsuit. When I cut my deal with New Japan, I made sure to get Brad Ringens in on it because I wanted to use his experience with Japanese management to my advantage and keep him by my side in all my dealings. Plus, I figured going to Japan would be a great experience. I'd pick up some excellent coin, eat some fresh sushi, have some good times with Brad, and deliver a great big fuck you to Vince. That's how I entered the world of Japanese professional wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling. My first match in Japan was a triple threat match against Fujita and Chono on October 8, 2005. It really didn't matter who they put in the ring with me. I knew the Japanese crowds were looking for a monster heel. They wanted someone they could ooh and awe about, and I was going to be that guy. I was happy to be working and making money again, but my whole time there, I was waiting for bad news to drop at any moment. That's the mind game a lawsuit plays with you. As soon as New Japan started advertising my first match, the WWE lawyers tried to stop me from appearing. They threatened New Japan and claimed they were going to get an injunction to prevent me from doing the match. Right up until the time I stepped on the plane to Japan, I was actually expecting my lawyers to call me on my cell and say, "Go back home, Brock. WWE pulled such and such legal maneuver and the match is off." Lucky for me, WWE's lawyers were full of shit. WWE never sued New Japan, and they never got an injunction to prevent me from working my scheduled match. But that wasn't the end of the hassle. I was scheduled to wrestle on a couple of shows in Japan in December, and then go back to work their big annual show on January 4th, 2006. I thought all of the shows would go off without a hitch, because while the WWE's legal dogs had barked a lot, they had shown themselves to have no bite. They made all these
So you mean tell me after all that talk of threatening to sue New Japan and injunction and nothing happened? Man, Brock Lesnar, I see why Vince like Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar ain't no punk. Man, Brock Lesnar about that business, man. And that is undisputed.
And that is undisputed.
See what you guys say. Oh man. Let me hold the show. Let's hold it. Pump the brakes. Hold the phone. We got ourselves a super chat for the evening. We got Figure 4 TV for $4.99. His message is keep delivering this content the IWC needs you, bro. And he wants me to play open mic night. I'll be glad to. Let's play it right now.
Who the hell told you tonight was open mic night, bitch?
Thank you, Figure 4 TV. I appreciate the super chat. And yes, I will do my best to keep delivering the content, locker room, scandals, behind the scenes, you name it. Let's continue on because this is a very good topic, guys. Let's get the likes up once again. 12 people in here, 7 likes. Let's get it up. This is Brock Lesnar's time in New Japan Pro Wrestling and a potential lawsuit from WWE threatening him not to appear in New Japan. Let's continue on.
threats about forcing me to sit out the October show, and they kept backing down every time. I thought it was a case of the boy who cried wolf. I was wrong. Right before I headed out to Japan for the December shows, WWE filed what is called a Motion for Temporary Restraining Order, or a TRO. I wasn't too well versed in these legal terms at the time, but I've sure learned them thanks to my hard-way education from World Wrestling Entertainment and their team of attorneys. WWE asked the judge who was presiding over our lawsuit to issue an immediate injunction against me that would prevent me from wrestling on the New Japan shows. If I decided to ignore the TRO, I would be in contempt of court. My lawyers fought back, but the judge was taking his time in making a decision. You can't tell a judge to hurry up because Brock wants to know whether to get on the plane to Japan or not. So during my whole flight over to Japan, I'm wondering if I'm even going to get to work when I land. I kept thinking how pissed off I was going to be if I had to turn right back around once I landed in Japan because the judge ruled against me and in favor of WWE. The judge, however, never granted the TRO, and I wrestled on and got paid for the December shows. When I got back to the United States, I was told that WWE formally withdrew its motion because they knew it was a loser. They never really wanted the judge to make a decision. In my opinion, WWE's motion, like most of their threats, was just a legal form of harassment intended to make me lose sleep and spend as much money as possible on lawyers. I went back to Japan again for their major annual show on January 4th, 2006, and did a few more shows after that. I'm sure it burned Vince's ass that he couldn't do anything to stop me. I was a vengeful person for many years. An eye for an eye wasn't just a saying to me, it was a way of life. In time, I've come to learn just how much this kind of negativity wears you down, but back then, I wasn't ready to accept that truth. My finishing maneuver in New Japan was the very same one I used in WWE. In WWE, it was called the F5. In New Japan, it was called the Verdict. That was my way of sending a message to Vince and his fucking lawyers. I planned on kicking WWE's ass in court, and I wanted the world to know I was still a top dog whose bite was every bit as bad as his bark, if not better. Once the Inokis realized that Vince was not going to be able to stop me from wrestling for them, they went ahead and built their company around me. We were off to the races, and before anyone knew it, I beat Fujita and Chono in a triple threat match to win the IWGP World Heavyweight title. One of my old coaches used to tell me that 80% of the things we spend our time worrying and having nightmares about never actually happen. We spend so much of our lives racking our brains about things that will never materialize. It's all such a waste of valuable time. But I'll be the first to admit I didn't understand this until I got into UFC and focused on the truly important things in life. Back when I had to travel all the way to Japan just to earn a living, the sword was still at my throat, and it was tough to have a positive outlook on anything. With all that negativity around me, it didn't take long for me to get back on that vodka and Vicodin kick. Brad called me the other day to ask about this book, and he was reminding me of a match I had with a Japanese wrestler named Nakanishi. Brad thought it was one of the best matches he ever saw me fight, and we both remembered that I was half shooting on the poor guy. Unfortunately, that's all I remember about the match. Brad remembers so much more about it, but when you're poisoning your system with pills and alcohol, your memory is one of the first things that gets affected. I can come up with a lot of reasons why I got back on that drugs and booze train again, but they're all excuses. My back was killing me at the time, and I was in constant pain. I went into the hospital for an MRI and found out I had ruptured 2 vertebrae, which meant I was flying across the world to wrestle with a broken back. The doctors were telling me my situation was serious enough that they were strongly recommending surgery. No thanks, not for me. I knew too many athletes who had back surgeries and never recovered. I was going to get through it on my own. But that's a lot easier said than done. I was having what is called strong style matches against all the top guys New Japan had to offer. In WWE, everyone performs a very safe style, or as safe as professional wrestling can be, given that the company is built on the name entertainment. In New Japan Pro Wrestling, the wrestlers go out of their way to try to convince the audience that pro wrestling is still somewhat for real. The office actually encourages the wrestlers to go out there and beat the hell out of each other. If someone gets hurt, it's considered good for the business. I didn't mind wrestling strong style. but doing it with 2 ruptured vertebrae was just plain stupid of me. I'd get back into my locker room with Brad and just collapse from the pain. I wasn't about to let anyone know how I was really feeling, so the only way to mask it all was to swallow more Vicodins and wash them down with more vodka. I'm so blessed that I'm alive to tell this story, because there are a lot of people who went through the same thing as me who aren't around today. Thank God I woke up one morning and decided that enough was enough. I knew if I kept on living this way, I would just one day stop living. Eventually, the odds catch up to you. There's no escaping the inevitability that something will go wrong, whether it's choking on your own vomit while you're sleeping or falling down while you're all fucked up and smashing your head. There's too many ways to fuck up when you've dulled your own senses to the point that you're numb to everything. So, I just stopped. Cold turkey. I didn't stop because I went to some WWE-sponsored rehab. I didn't stop because I went into therapy or counseling or anything like that. I stopped because I wanted to see my daughter, Maya, grow up, and I knew I wasn't going to be there for her if I kept going in the wrong direction. My timing couldn't have been better. The Inokis were having a lot of internal problems with their company, and I knew that New Japan was on a downswing. My time in their organization was quickly coming to an end, but I wanted to go out with a bang. That's where Akebono comes into the picture. Akebono was a big-time national superstar in Japan. Even though he was originally from Hawaii and not Japan, he was respected as a legitimate sports icon, a folk hero, because he was a dominant Japanese sumo champion. I was happy when the Inokis told me they wanted me to do a match with him because I knew we could build it up as the great big American heel champion against the even bigger Japanese sumo legend. I saw big dollar signs in that matchup. Akebono is another giant of a man who has a great big heart. I believe we could have drawn big money against each other if the Inokis had played their cards right. I called Akebono Big Chad, and he was one of the few guys in the wrestling business I considered to be a friend. I wanted to make our matchup mean something so that we could enjoy a long program and make a lot of money with each other. But the Inokis had no long-term vision for Brock Lesnar versus Akebono. They wanted me to beat him right on television. I couldn't believe it. Why would they want me to kill what could be a great feud with one match on free TV? Now, I understood one of the reasons why Steve Austin had been so angry that day in Atlanta when WWE wanted to hotshot our first match on Monday Night Raw. Because I'm a stubborn bastard, I demanded that we do what's called a fuck finish, so we could come back with a rematch down the road. I had this idea about me and Big Chad doing all these big man spots, and at the right time I'd smack him in the head with the IWGP title belt. The Inokis kept wanting me to just beat Big Chad, but I wore them down until they agreed to do the finish my way. So Big Chad and I go out to the ring, and we're doing all the typical spots big powerful guys do against each other. We do the shoulder tackle attempts where no one budges, the spot where I run into the ropes and collide with Big Chad, or he comes charging into me and we both end up in each other's faces. When it came time for the finish, I cracked the big fucker upside his melon with the title belt just like I planned. Big Chad dropped to the canvas, I covered him, and the entire arena went quiet. Dead silence. Not a single sound from the crowd. The audience wasn't buying it. They didn't pay to see a fuck finish, and they're too intelligent to buy into a cheap horseshit heel victory like that. What a dumbass mistake I had just made. The referee dropped down and started counting, and I'm saying to Big Chad, "Kick out, you son of a bitch, kick out! 1, 2, and the instant before the referee hits the canvas for the 3 count, Big Chad gets his arm up in the air, and the people went nuts. We ended up doing some ridiculous finish that served no purpose except to piss off the Inokis, but at least Big Chad cared enough to give them the best match we could manage, and I think, all things considered, it was one hell of a match. The fact that Big Chad and I could put together a solid match didn't surprise me. He's a trained athlete with a lot of pride, and so am I. What did surprise me was that the Inokis didn't try to get me to drop the title before I left Japan. They probably knew better than to make me feel like I was being backed into a corner. because I was already pissed off that they started playing games with my